You could be on public property, but you can't be on private property. And since you don't want to give your names and badge numbers, which is the policy, you're also going to be reprimanded.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. A very happy Independence Day to each and every one of you. Hopefully you're not sitting around watching my videos. You're out enjoying the fireworks or the festivities of the day with your family. But just in case you happen to make your way back and have nothing to do and you're sitting around and you get this recommendation, I hope you'll take time to watch it. Today's video comes to us from Jonesboro, Arkansas. It was published by a YouTuber named Honest Citizen. It depicts Honest Citizen, who I assume is an auditor / cop watcher, taking issue with officers in a police cruiser parked in what appears to be the parking area of an apartment complex. Now, the auditor attempts to get the police to leave the parking lot, proclaiming that they are unlawfully on private property. I've edited out a lot of the video for dead space and things that just weren't relevant to our discussion, but if you're interested in seeing the unedited version, you can go over to Honest Citizen's channel and take a look at it. Let's watch the first part and then we'll come back and talk about the law.
I wonder what he's doing. Let's see what's going on. Hi. I don't know, you tell me. What's going on? Then can you move along, please? No, can you please move along? This is private property. I live here. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm a tenant that gives me landlord capabilities. Could you please exit my driveway? Then bring out a sergeant right now. Bring out a sergeant right now. Check this out, guys. I got some crazy ass people now thinking. Try to get some badge numbers and what is this about? Get your sergeant out here, man. You're on my property. Sirs, I need your names and badge numbers. I'm gonna have to report this. Nah, man, they on my driveway. I live here. I don't need no police around here. Listen to your sergeant. Your sergeant's going to tell you you can't stand here. You could go on the road over there, but you can't stand here. Go tell my girlfriend to call Miss Carla. They're doing it again.
Call Miss Carla?
Yeah, tell Barbie to come out here, call Miss Carla. They're on my property. They have no reason to be here. They need to leave. They could go on the road where it's public, but this is my driveway. I live here. People live here. You don't have a right to be here. You need to go onto the road, sir. You need to go onto the road, sir.
I'm going live.
Go live, brother. Go live, bro. All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have no reason to be here.
Everybody go live.
Wonder what that is about. Yeah. I need your name and badge numbers, please.
No, I'm live now.
All right. Post it on my link. Post it. Tell Barbie to get on my Facebook, get on my YouTube. Call Carla. No reason to be here. Yep, they're just sitting in my driveway right here. In the driveway, blocking people.
What's really hysterical is that their front window tint is actually considered illegal by federal law.
No.
I can't even see through that.
No. All right.
So the guy in the video here obviously lives in a place in Jonesboro, Arkansas where they don't love the police. He's gotten a good portion of the neighborhood involved here in an incident that really wasn't an incident before he started to make it one. But as it relates to this particular situation, he is attempting to expel the police from what he refers to as his property. The problem is that the place he's trying to expel them from is not his property, nor does he have the authority to exclude them or anyone else from it. Let's first look at the Arkansas criminal trespass law and see if we have anything we can use to expel the police, and then we'll talk about the rest of it. So under Arkansas law, a person commits criminal trespass if he or she purposely enters or remains unlawfully enter upon a vehicle of another person or the premises owned or leased by another person. Now you might think, okay, owned or leased, he's a tenant, that's a lease. We'll get to more of that in a little bit, but that doesn't apply to this situation. And if you go down to subsection D of the Arkansas statute related to criminal trespass, it has this caveat. This section does not apply to the following persons who are acting in the line of duty or within the scope of their employment. And the first person mentioned is a law enforcement officer. Now, it's true that we don't actually have any information as to what the police are doing there, but in almost every case where a police officer is on duty, in uniform, and in a marked patrol unit, they are acting in the line of duty or within the scope of their employment. So we know for sure, based on that criminal trespass does not apply. But what about just regular old civil trespass? Can they be sued or expelled for trespassing on private property? Well, the answer is generally yes, the police can be expelled from private property by the property owner, but that doesn't really apply here, and I'll explain that shortly. I chose this video in this particular instance because very few people who do what I do discuss property rights. And I'm not going to go too far into the weeds on it, but you should know that property rights are generally referred to under the law as a bundle of sticks. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but I'll explain further. You have separate and distinct rights as a property owner. Each of them is represented by a stick. So in the law, we refer to all of those property rights together and combined to create this bundle of sticks. Again, not going too far into it, but among the sticks or rights germane to property ownership are the right to use and enjoy the property, and more relevant to this encounter is the right to exclude everyone else from the property. So why then doesn't this gentleman have the right to exclude the police in a property that he leases? Well, mostly because he's not the property owner. He is a tenant at the property. So what he has is a license to exercise some of the rights of the property owner. Now, as it relates to his actual apartment, he would have the right, generally speaking, to exclude everyone else, even the police and even the landlord during the term of the lease. But as it relates to common areas, he does not have a superior property right such that he could exclude the police or the landlord or anyone for that matter. In fact, if you think about it, he doesn't have any more or less of a right to exclude anyone than anyone else living there. Now, it's probably not the case, but for all he knows, the officers in this patrol car could live there. They could have a family member there. They could be visiting someone. Many apartment complexes have housing officers who live in the apartment complex for free or reduced rent in exchange for extra patrols and help with people being evicted or enforcing private rules or whatever. So this gentleman really has no way of knowing what the police are there for, and they don't have to explain that to him or anyone else. The officers could be there because the actual property owners asked them, or the command staff of the police department, to send extra patrols. Maybe they're having burglaries or vandalism or something. We just really have no way of knowing. But the important thing to note is that he can't exclude the police because he's not the property owner. And even if we take the cops out of the equation, let's say this guy has a problem with someone visiting a neighbor. Would he then have a right to exclude the neighbor's guests from the property? The answer is absolutely not. Just the same as no one could exclude his guests from the property except the property owner. And he actually makes mention of the fact, well, we've called the landlord. That should tell you right there, if you have to call somebody else in order to exercise authority, then you don't have it. And even if he did own the property, the law would still allow the police to exercise control over property pursuant to law enforcement functions like crime scene control and emergency responses, etc. Now, ultimately, this case takes what I thought was kind of an unexpected turn because I certainly didn't see it coming, but let's watch the rest of it and we'll come back and talk about that.
After you get off the phone with Carla, call the non-emergency police department and explain to them that they need to send a sergeant out here so that these people can understand that you could be on public property, but you can't be on private property. And since you don't want to give your names and badge numbers, which is the policy, you're also going to be reprimanded.
What's your badge number?
They refuse to identify themselves. At this point, I don't believe them to be police officers because they have not identified themselves as police officers. Who are you and what are you doing on my property? Who are you and what are you doing on my property? Put it in the drive and go on the road. I don't give a damn if you're on the road. Get off the property. They refuse to identify themselves and they told me they have no reason to be here. All right. So check this out, fellers. I ain't got to leave my porch for this, do I? I ain't even got to leave my front porch. Where are you doing on my property? Identify yourselves in the vehicle.
This is a private driveway.
Blocking the driveway, he's refusing to identify himself.
It's my house right here, man. It's my driveway right here. They do not have permission.
Causing a ruckus among everyone in there. Okay. But he's trying to figure out who it is.
Yeah, they're not identifying themselves as police officers. This doesn't look like a normal police vehicle. They refused to get off private property. They didn't tell me. I asked them what's going on. They said there's nothing going on.
Sorry,
If there's not,
If there's nothing going on.
if there's nothing going on and your lights are not on, bye-bye. Bye now. Yeah, they're sending. No, you can't leave you can't leave now. You can't leave now. The police are on the way. Police on the way now. You can't leave now.
And nearly just hit me too.
What you doing on our property? We've contacted the landlord. The landlord does not agree with you being here. She lives in Truman. If she has to come here and trespass y'all, you're going to be in some serious.
They're lucky I don't have my board, because if they would have hit me, that's assault by a police officer or supposed police officer. My board would have went
Yeah.
through their windshield.
Are you okay with them on your property? No. No, not at all. Look at this. What, you think leaving and coming back's going to give you permission to be here? Are you going to identify yourselves yet? Come on, man, get them off the property. There's no reason for them to be here. They told me they have no reason to be here. Please tell them to leave. Yes, or at least go on the proper place where it's the public area. That's all we're asking.
You're going to jail for disorderly conduct.
For what?
Put your hands behind your back.
I'm going what?
So I think deductive reasoning can lead us to believe that the officers that show up off camera are probably responding to the call that honest citizen and his girlfriend or whoever else calls the non-emergency number makes to the police department to ostensibly come and help them expel the police officers that are in the cruiser from the parking lot. What they end up doing instead is taking him into custody for disorderly conduct. The whole dynamic is kind of strange, but he's saying some things that are kind of silly, like, I don't know if these guys are police officers because they won't identify themselves to me as police officers. Guys, they're sitting in a marked patrol car, and they're sitting there for a long period of time. And then they start to leave, and he says, oh, you can't leave. Well, you just spent 10 minutes telling them they have to leave, and then they leave, and you tell them they can't leave. And so they circle their way back. Of course, their intention was never to leave in the first place. They were circling back for some reason. I don't know why. But it certainly wasn't to acquiesce to his request that they leave. Now, in defense of him, he was doing something that I would not advise people to do, but he wasn't being legally disorderly. And the two approaching officers couldn't possibly have seen the worst of his disorderly behavior because he did it several minutes before they showed up. By the time they show up, he wasn't even really being loud anymore. He's just basically being critical of the police, and that's not really a crime. Just for fun, let's look at the Arkansas statute on disorderly conduct. A person commits the offense of disorderly conduct if with the purpose to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk of public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm. He or she engages in fighting or in violent, threatening, or tumultuous behavior, makes unreasonable or excessive noise, in a public place uses abusive or obscene language, or makes an obscene gesture. That's pretty much all in this statute that might apply. I don't think it applies to anything he did here. He didn't really do anything that comports with this statute, and I certainly don't think that he did anything to deserve to be arrested for. There's a considerable amount of federal precedent at this point protecting speech critical of the police, including the 8th, which is where Arkansas is, and that's basically all this was. It was speech being critical of the police. Again, we have no idea what the police were doing. They could have been waiting for additional units to go serve an arrest warrant or execute a search warrant. They could be there on extra patrol. We just don't know. But my genuine belief is that this person doesn't understand what he is and isn't allowed to do under his rights as a tenant, and it's not that he was trying to bait the police officers. But depending on his intent, he might have been doing something that was not very smart, or he might have been doing something that was genius. If his intent was to try to exercise rights that he don't have, well, obviously that's not a good call. But if his intent was to try to bait them into making an unlawful arrest, well, it was probably geniusly well played. Now, in closing, I am pretty hard on bad cops or police on this channel, but I do try to be objectively real and authentic with my audience. And my genuine opinion is that objectively and authentically, this is kind of a silly thing to do. I generally try not to be too hard on auditors or cop watchers because they do important work, and the ones who do it the right way do a good job. The ones who do it the wrong way, they make it harder for everyone else. And if you think about it, that sounds exactly like what you might have heard about police officers. The ones that do the right way do good work that everybody can appreciate and feel safer, and the ones who do it in a very poor or unconstitutional or illegal or ego-driven way, they make it harder for everybody else. So I make that point because I've often made the argument that the extreme versions of people who audit or cop watch are really no different than the cops that they hate. The difference is that the cops have the authority of the state behind their corruption, so they are punching down, and therefore their conduct is worse, at least in my opinion. But a lot of the people who just hate police, they start from the place of like, if it's the cops, then they're wrong and I hate them. Well, okay, fine. I mean, we all have the right to feel however we're going to feel, and I don't know what your goal is, but if you believe that that's a virtuous position, well, respectfully, you'd be wrong about that, and you're lying to yourself, because ultimately all you're doing is acting in the same way as the people that you dislike. See, the cops that we feature on this channel, the bad cops, they draw a line between them and the rest of us. They decide that they're good and we're bad. Well, people who decide that whatever team you play for, or whatever group you belong to, or whatever, including people who hate the police simply because they are the police, are really no different than the police assuming that people are bad or criminals simply because they're not the police. In my opinion, it's the same corruption of heart that leads to that sort of behavior. And when people act the way this gentleman is acting with his perceived authority, even though we now know that he really doesn't have the authority to do it, they're just showing the world that they would weaponize whatever authority they have or think they have and use it for power and control, which ultimately is the problem that we all actually have with the government. It's really no different than a corrupt government. It's just that you're not the one in power. And even though I'm generally critical of the police, I do think that more harm can be done by allowing people to think that this is a smart thing to do or a justifiable way to hold people accountable. Ultimately, what I fear will happen is that people will get themselves in trouble and get arrested and end up costing themselves a lot of money for something they can't recover from. Now, again, these comments are not related to the actual arrest. That was unlawful and it was unconstitutional, and I'm not defending that arrest. That certainly was not appropriate. My comments are about him actually trying to exclude the police from the property. That was kind of a silly thing to do, and hopefully he can get the department to settle on the arrest and get a check, because I don't think that a lawyer is going to take this case, and I'll tell you why. It's really important that you know what your rights are and you have a good, solid understanding of what you can and can't do before you go challenging the police, because if you find yourself getting arrested in the situation like the one that he was in, and then you're going to have to sue, then the jury's going to look at your video and look at the way you conducted yourself before the arrest, and they're going to decide whether they like you or not. I generally think that two wrongs don't make a right, but two wrongs can sometimes make a case right, RIPE, for a lawsuit. And again, the problem that he's going to have in this case is that a lawyer is not going to want to take this case because a jury is not going to like honest citizen very much, and they're not going to like the way he acted, and they're not going to want to award him any money. And one of the smart things that the cops did in executing this arrest is that they had different officers arrest him. They didn't get out, they didn't escalate, they didn't get loud with him, they didn't go hands-on with him, they didn't show everybody how much of a bully they are, they just sat in their car and didn't engage with him. I say smart, not like they were right, I mean smart in that they didn't really give him anything to use to prove malice or intent or anything like that in his retaliation lawsuit. They can rely on the idea that there was just a misunderstanding of what disorderly conduct was, as opposed to proving that they were mad because they're on camera, getting mad, losing their temper, whatever. They ultimately just chose not to engage and then had other officers that weren't involved come and make the arrest. And he hadn't said anything sideways to the arresting officer, so even though the arrest lacked probable cause, it's my opinion that he's going to have an uphill climb to get any serious recovery out of it. Remember, kids, there's no lawyer worth their salt who will tell you any different than this. If you're not a likable or at least tolerable plaintiff, a jury will not pay you. They may decide in your favor, they may say that you were technically right, and they may award you nominal damages, which is $1, and then they're going to award your attorney's fees. So the attorney is going to get paid, but you're not going to get paid. And generally, that's a 50-50 proposition. The attorney may get his money for the reasonable attorney's fees, but it also may be the case that the attorney doesn't get his money. That's never guaranteed. And so when an attorney sits down and looks at this, he's like, well, there's not going to be a big settlement because the jury's not going to like this guy very much. They're not going to give him $200,000. So that means that I'm not going to be able to take 30 or 40% of a big settlement. So my only hope will be a 50-50 shot of getting my reasonable attorney's fees, which means that no attorney's going to take this case probably. So hopefully for his sake, he ends up getting a check from the city who doesn't want to deal with it, but ultimately he's going to have a hard time getting a jury, in my opinion anyway, to like him and the way he acted over this well enough to give him a big check. Y'all probably aren't going to believe this because everything we see on YouTube would lead us to believe that these conversations don't actually happen. But when I was a police officer, our leadership used to tell us things like, not only do you have to be right, but you have to appear to be right as well. And that was before cameras were ubiquitous and in everyone's hands. What they were really saying was that the public's going to see what you do, and a jury may see what you do one day, and you not only have to be correct about what you do, but it has to look to them like you're correct too. Optics matter, and ultimately a jury is a bunch of people who are going to decide who they like better and who they thought was more at fault in the situation, regardless of what the technical law says. And that is exactly what you need as a plaintiff in a retaliation case, is for the jury to think that you were right. Not only were you right, but you conducted yourself in a way that was virtuous and deserving of a jury award. You need a jury to like you and want to give you money. And in my opinion, not to be too hard on this guy, but I do not see that happening in this particular case. And for that reason, I don't see any lawyers standing in line to take this case. Anyway, that's all for this one, guys. I hope you guys have an awesome Independence Day. Enjoy the fireworks, enjoy the time with your family. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on my channel and leave a comment on there as well. I will leave you with a few seconds of my dog, who we call Marshall, in his awesome tuxedo outfit. He's a law dog. He knows it. There's really not anything you can say to take that away from him, so I would suggest that you don't even try. I do have to say, we called him Thurgood Marshall, but one of my original supporters for my channel, Freddie Spaghetti, suggested to me that his name should be Furgood Marshall, and I can't agree more. So I'm hereby declaring, based on the 4th of July, that Marshall's new name is now Justice Furgood Marshall, the Frenchie. So I will leave you with his adorability. I hope you guys have an awesome day. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.